set the beat, I flow. Whoa. Set the beat, I flow. Whoa.
What is going on, everybody? It is the Money Match Gaming Podcast. I am part of your co-host team, The Infinite, aka Lance, aka the CEO of Money Match Gaming. Welcome, welcome, welcome. That is only half your team tonight. The other half happens to be my man, Dan Estrata.
Bam!
Cool, we got it.
Getting there. It's just the hard part is getting my fingers on camera. I feel like I have such a tight box here. Right. But what's up, guys? That's me. I'm Dan Estrata. I am the co-host for the Money Match Gaming Infinite Talk Show, Money Match Gaming Podcast Talk Show Extravaganza Spectacular, featuring Dan and the Infinite. I'm excited to talk about what we're talking about today because I very much so enjoyed it. And we're talking about the movie called The Green Book, which was a great movie. I don't know. Like, we're going to talk about it in a little bit, so you're going to hear more from me. But this is a strong recommendation early on for me.
All right, so I'll go into it real quick. Green Book. Green Book is a 2018 American comedy drama film set in the Deep South in the 1960s. It follows our tour between African-American classic and jazz pianist Don Shirley and Tony Vallelonga. You know, I knew I was going to mess it up, but it's kind of funny.
Vallelonga.
Vallelonga, an Italian-American bouncer who served as Shirley's driver and bodyguard. Directed by Peter Farrelly?
Yep, Peter Farrelly, I think.
Farrelly.
I don't know.
The film was written by Farrelly, Brian Currie, and Vallelonga's son, Nick Vallelonga, based on interviews with his father and Shirley, as well as letters his father wrote to his mother. The film named after the Negro Motorist Green Book, a mid-20th century guidebook for African-American travelers written by Victor Hugo Green to help them find motels and restaurants that would be acceptable. That is the Green Book.
Yep, and it's starring Mahershala Ali as Doc Shirley. And you have Viggo Mortensen. I always call him Viggo Mortensen because of an episode of Always Sunny where they're drunk, and that's what they keep saying his name is. But Viggo Mortensen, who plays Tony Lip, or Tony Vallelonga, and Linda Cardinelli, who plays Dolores Vallelonga, who is Tony Lip's wife. First, what are your impressions? We already kind of heard mine. I jumped the gun there.
Well, in general, it's a good movie, but it's really, really simple. For something that was such a big problem, and is still a big problem in today's environment, it's just too simple. And like it has its pluses and its minuses, you know, like being simple does a couple things really, really well. But then, you know, it also takes away from it a little bit, and we'll kind of get into that. But that's generally how I feel about the movie. It was good. It was great. It was pretty heartwarming. Makes you feel good at the end. But at the same time, it's just super simple. And, you know, we've talked a long time, Dan. You know, I like depth. I like to understand what I'm watching. I like to have a little bit more full-blown story explanations. We started here, we ended here, you know, the details and stuff. And, you know, obviously you can get some bad situations, you know, the death is in the details and all that stuff. But at the same time, this movie was just really, really simple. But that's my general take on the movie.
Yep. I mean, to an extent, I can agree with that, I guess. Like, there's no crazy things really that happen, but it is based on like a true story. So, you know, it's got to remain somewhat true to those characters. But I thought what it did well.
That's fair too.
My head's being a mess right now. Sorry about that.
So, you know, like, with it being so simple, I actually don't have a whole lot to say about today's movie. But
that's another thing. I don't really have a whole lot to say, but I did like it.
Right, because it's so simple. And like, you know, to start, it's like the positive thing about the movie being simple is it kind of makes some of the solutions that that people have for these types of problems, simple. They're
Right.
not. It's just like you just got to get to know more people. Like that's
Yeah,
really
just-
all
yep.
it comes down to. Is if
Learn
you
learn others' experiences.
right, and,
You
and
know,
if,
as the old adage says, walk a mile in someone else's shoes.
right, and that's all that was. He like really loved Shirley, and Shirley really loved Tony. Like, and that's simply because they spent time together and they interacted with
Right.
one another. And like that's usually all it takes is you just need one person that is outside of your world or your current reality to expose you to the reality that everybody's different and it doesn't matter the color of your skin. Like, sure, there are some cultural elements, but that doesn't change, that you can't have different kinds of people coexisting and getting along,
Right.
Like, of course you can run into a bunch of the wrong people. So like people often assume that like, oh, I live in this neighborhood, I have a bunch of these people who are no good. Like this, it has more to do with your financial status and being in that situation than it does with the color of your skin.
Correct.
That's generally what it boils down to. And so, this movie,
And that honestly goes back to a part of the movie.
right?
For example, and this was probably one of the more powerful scenes in the movie, when Tony is telling Doc Shirley that he thinks he's blacker than him because he lives in a poor area and sees more black folk, and he I don't know, likes black music and black food, as he calls it. And then Doc is very expressive to say that he doesn't fit in with anybody because of people like Tony who are like, you don't see me as you see me as a black guy, but you say I'm not a black guy, and black guys don't see me as black guys, and white guys don't see me as white guys because I'm very obviously a black guy, so I don't fit in anywhere. And I thought that was a really, really, really powerful scene in the movie, especially just like the whole way everything was portrayed.
Right. And I mean, like, I think everybody has that kind of moment, when you go through any kind of transformation. Obviously, it adds fuel to the fire when you're in a situation where, like, people hate black people for unbeknownst reasons, and it also has, like, a lot of harm towards you and yourself in those types of situations. So, like, yeah, it was a really powerful scene, but simple.
Interesting. Yeah. Interesting thing I noticed about this movie, though, and I'm thinking about it now. They go throughout the movie, while they say a lot of like very derogatory terms, they never say like the N-word ER. Never. Not once. Which is interesting. Quentin Tarantino might need to take some notes because he just loves throwing that into all his movies. But not once. They say all sorts of derogatory terms, but never use the hard R N-word.
Well, to be fair, anytime you see that word used in itself, it's like a situation to where, like, what's up? My podcast. Yeah, you guys are destroying it. Thank you, family. Sometimes you have family.
Running with the fam.
Right. So, I think that's on purpose, though, to be fair, because every situation that they end up in isn't one of those situations where I feel like that word would come out. Because even in the movies,
that bar scene, definitely that bar scene. When
that's fair. That's fair.
When Doc is getting his ass kicked by 3 white dudes in a bar for just being black and sitting there, or
that one's fair.
At the end when they're leaving the restaurant because they won't serve them, and the guy is like, "No, you have to come back here and play."
That's true. They could have came out there.
Yeah, like there's a few times it could have happened. I mean, granted, all the Italian dudes just spoke Italian the whole time, so they would say like eggplant and weird shit like that. But yeah, like there was times where it could have happened that it just didn't.
You know what? You are right. You're completely right. Like, I just thought because it was kind of like a sophisticated setting. He was always in these really ritzy places. But
he wasn't really, because at the end of the day, he wasn't allowed to be in those ritzy places for longer than his performance.
I mean, that's true, but I mean, it's still high class people in a sense. They were all pretty well off, like in general. So, I was kind of expecting it to be a little bit more, you know, high up, you know, and it that word can sting. You know, like hearing it sometimes, you're kind of like, eh. You're like, you cringe really hard. Like,
I couldn't even imagine being that, like, you know, that word doesn't affect me to the extent that it would affect, you know, an African American male and African American female. But it is a cringy word, man, to hear. It is you just said that. That's
right.
The one you're going with, my guy.
Yeah, in the right settings, and I've always felt that way growing up. Like in certain situations, if I heard it and it was kind of said with too much passion, I would always kind of ugh.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, and you can tell. You can tell like when it's used, like the vitriol behind it, and you can just be like, whoa, take a couple steps back there, my guy.
Yeah, but like that's kind of what made the movie good. But again, it also takes away from the movie. Like it's so simple that like that's the only takeaway I can have from the movie. We just need to spend more time together.
Yeah. I thought the music was really good. I thought Mahershala Ali didn't fully learn how to play the piano. Like that wasn't all him playing. A lot of it was being instructed by another pianist. But it sounded all awesome. It all sounded really good.
Yeah.
Even especially like the scene at the end when he's playing at the bar and like, you know, playing out of his comfort zone, playing a different type of music, and looks like he's having a lot of fun. Like that song was really great too. And I thought it was, while being very serious and very uncomfortable topic in some senses, it was very heartwarming in a lot of ways, and it was really, really funny. Like that movie was funny from top to bottom, which, you know, usually when you see, you know, going back to kind of Black Klansman, when that was kind of advertised as like a comedy drama, and that was way harder on the drama side than it was on the comedy side.
Yeah.
This one being a comedy drama was probably heavier on the comedy side, just because of like the way Tony acts and talks and says his things, and even the back and forth that him and Doc Shirley have is really enjoyable a lot of times.
I have a question for you, and this is something that kind of like eased in my mind just now. When did they start liking each other? Like that was so hidden to me, and like I didn't see the transition.
Well, it developed over time. It was like multiple things happened that caused respect in one another. So, like, for example, when after the first concert, after his first performance, when he was outside, you know, playing dice with all the other drivers, and Doc Shirley's like, "Go, it's time to go." And then he was like, "You know, you were allowed to be inside. They didn't have a choice." And that was when I think Tony's character was like, "Oh, I get it," to an extent. And that's when he kind of lightened up for the first time. And I think when Tony saved Doc from the bar is when Doc started to lighten up in a sense. And then they started to feed off each other. And they still had their, like, you know, down times and up times, but they were like getting together as a people. And the thing I think that made Doc truly like admire Tony and respect Tony was when they were at that one club where they saw the other Italian guys, and they're like, "Hey, you know, come meet with us and we'll get you a better job." And Doc is waiting outside of his room when Tony's going out to meet with them, and, you know, gives him the whole offer, and he's like, "Oh, I'm turning them down. I made an agreement with you. I'm sticking out with you. I'm just going to tell them no thank you." And that's when Doc was like, "Okay, he's a good one. He's gonna stay with me. I trust this guy." And that's when they first had a drink together, and it made Doc feel less alone.
Right. How do you feel about his bandmates? You know, did you kind of?
I mean, I had no real like or dislike for them. They were barely in the movie, but I do like that even though he was told that one guy was Russian, he considered him German the whole movie, even to the very end when they're taking shots of vodka, and like he does like a Russian toast, and he responds, "Donkey shit," you know, German, thank you.
I thought that was a little weird, you know, like them in particular in this movie was very, very weird. And I mean,
Mm-hmm.
like, maybe it's the oversimplification of the movie that kind of makes
Mm-hmm.
me feel that way. But in general, like, were they on Doc's side, or like,
Yeah.
was it like a situation to where they were just like, all right, he wants to do it, he's the leader, we get paid, we'll go with you, we don't
I
hate
think it was
you.
a bit of both. I think it was fear because of being put in an uncomfortable situation a lot of the times. But I also think that it was respect because Doc is doing something that others don't and can't do, and they respect that, and they're they don't get treated really differently throughout the ride, so they don't experience it as much. But they, I think there was a half and half kind of feeling of respect and also like kind of tentativeness, especially like they didn't really seem to like Tony at the start. I don't even know if they really liked him at the end either, but they put up with him, and that kind of made them not 100% into the whole idea. But I think overall they it's like 50-50 split.
Right. Because I mean, I thought it was weird that they traveled by themselves. And
Mm-hmm.
like I get it. I really, really do. That felt like okay, Doc, bad things are gonna happen, and like for my own safety,
Right.
we're gonna go this way, and we're
Right.
gonna let
Yeah.
you do your civil rights thing, and like we'll
But
play.
it's also I think goes with Doc's character. You know, I mean, the first time you see him, he's in this room draped in gold, and he's wearing this extravagant like dress type thing, and he's sitting on a throne above Tony. So it's also kind of this like class status that he's built into his own head, where he's like, he when he first gets put into the car, he has like a little blanket gets put over his legs. So I think it was also part of the just he feels more comfortable with more space and stuff like that
Right. You don't think it's
rather
the
than
squad?
crunching the four people into the car, right?
Okay. All right. I mean,
Also,
that's somewhat fair. It's just
I'm
I,
sure I'm sure those guys had their cellos with them. I
yeah.
mean, unless they borrowed cellos from every place, that's possible, but it's probably a space thing for that as well.
I mean, that's true. I imagine they could have traveled with something bigger, but I mean, so like generally speaking, my mind's like, well, they could probably take like a bus and kind of do it that way. But like, I just think that there was a little bit of fear there, especially the way they portrayed, the co-band mates and things of that nature, to where
Right.
they're kind of always on the peripheral. They're never in the same space. The only time I think that they actually end up in the same space is when they like that first hotel they went to, but they were kind of separate then. And then at the very end, when they're eating in that place in Birmingham, the last stop before
But
Christmas.
I mean, obviously, every time they perform, they're together. But there was that scene when they're at the first place where they explain to Tony why. I mean, granted, they're not with Dom or Doc at the time, but they explain to Tony why everything is going as it is, and they're definitely not the main characters. But weren't they the ones who called Tony to tell them that
Doc was getting beat.
that
Yeah.
Doc was getting his ass beat? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that definitely happened. I'm not saying that they don't care. I'm just,
Right. Yeah.
I'm,
Yeah.
I'm
They were just doing their own thing.
right. I'm picking your brain on like, just to get a
Right.
better, deeper understanding of the actual movie. Because to me, it was super simple. Everything
Yeah.
was not complicated at all. There was like no nuance. It was like, hey, the situation sucks, and here are some of the bad things that kind of can happen in those types of situations, and why you have to be aware of them. And that was kind of just how simple the movie was. There was no like, it was just simple. It was simple,
Yeah, but like I said,
straightforward, and to
I
the
also
point.
think the fact that it is, a true movie also lends to that simplicity because I think there's a book like there's a Green Book that this is based off of. I'm not 100% sure. I need to look into that. But
Well, it tells you above that it was basically named after that book.
well, no,
But
it was
like,
named after the guidebook,
yeah,
right?
yeah, correct.
But
And then
I wasn't sure if this was the story itself because, like I said, it is a true story. I wasn't sure if there was a book for the true story. You know what I'm saying?
it says the film was written by Farrelly, Brian Currie, and Vallelonga's son. So they're like, it's a compilation of like letters and then his direct relations with his father. And so that like that seems how they're building the movie. And I mean, I imagine that's part of the reason why it's simple, because there's like a lot of in-depth things that you might not kind of get by having a conversation with your dad or reading old letters. But
Right.
you know, I would like them to embellish in these types of situations. Like it's cool that the film, you know, has true elements, but at the same time I do want some more in-depth things, because like I want to know what Doc's family looks like. Like that was like one of those things that I felt like.
I mean, they talk about his brother, but they never even mention if he connects with him or not by the end there.
Right. And then like in general his family dynamics, like why is he so uppity? Like where did he get all these opportunities from? Which I think is like an important element to understand some of the hardship that might happen.
Didn't he say he like met someone and that person like got him into this school of the arts, and that's where like when he was drinking in the bar, like drinking that one time with Tony, I think he explained kind of why he is like why he plays piano, why he plays the kind of music he does, all that kind of stuff.
Right, and why he doesn't put whiskey on his, you know, piano and things of that nature.
Yeah. But he didn't they never really talked about his family. I mean, it seemed like it just wasn't something he liked talking about. But yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, and so that sophistication would just add a lot, you know, because I'm always curious how people end up in those types of situations, to where, you know, if he was dead broke, you know, he's awfully uppity for dead broke, you know, and it's like he almost makes me feel like he's not even from America, you know, but like without doing my own research, I wouldn't know that from the film.
Right.
So. Right. But yeah, that's all I got for pros, man. Just like what I enjoyed about the movie. Was there anything specifically that you were overjoyed about?
No, I mean I thought the both like the two main parts, like Mahershala Ali and Viggo Mortensen, did great job acting. I thought it was a really well acted movie. Yeah, I really did. We pretty much touched on everything I had.
Okay. Yeah. So as far as cons go, so. The oversimplification made me feel like the overall problem was a little trivial. So, like, when you simplify something that way, it definitely makes you feel like it's not really that big of a deal. And so, yes, at the end of the day, we do need to commingle a little bit more. We do need to be a part of each other's cultures to actually start kind of weaving those connections and stuff like that. But like it's not that simple. You're fighting against like an ingrown like, you know, over tradition hate, you know, and that's not it just takes a long time, you know, and like you know, they don't go into any depth of like Shirley's approach and all that other stuff. It's really, really brief. They don't go into like how he feels and think a whole lot. You know, they give you the gist and then kind of move on and try to let the experiences that happen between, you know, both Tony and Doc and Shirley throughout the like entire like experiences that they go through on the drive to try to flush it out. But I don't think it does that. I think at the end of the day, like, you walk away just going, okay, well, we just need to talk more. And like, you know, there's so many situations where talking's not going to do it. And that just kind of, for me, takes away from some of the messaging that they could have gone for in this situation. You know, because like even the way he approaches, you know, Tony's family, I felt like was weird. You know, like, was it really just a cosign by Tony? And then everybody was like, oh, dude, you're welcome. You know, when earlier that, you know, they were calling him an eggplant and all this other stuff, you know, and before, like, you know, they didn't want to drink from the same cups. And, you know, the whole family was like, yeah, we have, you know, these black dudes in the kitchen and, you know, they might do something bad to your wife type of deal, you know, and it like, it just felt like that was.
Right. Yeah. The ending with the family was somewhat weird. Like, I agree with that because it was just like a silence. And then there was just like, all right, well, get him a table, get him a seat. But yeah, I mean, maybe it is the co-signed by Tony. Tony very clearly had a big influence on the people around him, at least in the movies aspect. Everyone spoke very highly of Tony. Everyone was very excited by the prospect of Tony being around. Tony was a big part, I thought. And so I think to an extent the co-sign by Tony definitely helped, especially earlier when they were, when someone said the eggplant comment, he's like, "Hey, don't call him that. Don't do that." And they were just like, "Okay, we won't." Like, because they know if they get out of line, Tony will beat the fuck out of him.
Yeah,
That's what he does. And that's what the mafia tried to get him to do multiple times in that movie, and he was just like, "Nah, I'm not trying to. I'm just trying to do some honest work." And I respect that.
Yeah, and so like that scene to me was kind of like a little iffy. Like I'm sure that like to a degree people were like, "Oh, you sure?" You know what I mean? Like he was probably like, "No, I actually had a really good time on my trip," and maybe if it really did happen that way, then that whole time he was probably talking up Shirley. They might have been like, "Well, how was your trip?" And he was like, "Actually, he's one of the greatest people I've ever met in life. Here are some of the reasons why." And then he shows up to the door and he's like, "Thank you for coming. I was hoping you would come." Because I mean, like, even the way he like let him out and he's like, "Come meet my family," and then he was like, "Nah." Like the way that he left, it just that part was just weird, and like there had to be more to that situation than just that. But you only get what you get, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I mean, the leaving and coming back, but it was nice too because it added to the feeling of it. Because I think if he would have if Doc would have just shown up with him initially, everybody would have been standoffish. But because they were like able to question him about Doc and he gave like a response, they were like, "Okay, never mind,"
Right. And then like I like how they set it up to where part of the family comes or family friends come and he's like the guy's making a joke like, "You didn't even bring anything, man."
Mm-hmm.
And then they let him in and then he comes behind him and he like actually brings something.
Yeah.
And so like like this high status dude who's obviously trying to be a good human being,
right?
Like, and that just kind of solidified that whole type of situation, so. But that was it. That's how simple this movie is. It's just a slight, heartwarming, like small dip into the pond, And like, I guess that's my problem. Is it's just so lightly flavored. It's just such a simple and just barely scratches the surface type of movie when it comes to Black Strife and things of that nature. So,
Yeah, it did win. I'm looking at like the accolades. It was nominated for 5 Golden Globes and won the Best Motion Picture for Comedy this year at the Golden Globes. Which is interesting. Which I thought it had won, but I wasn't 100% sure. But I mean, I didn't see the other nominees. I'll have to look at them. But I think this film was deserving. I thought this was a very good and important movie as well.
Mahershala Ali, right? Is Mahershala Ali. I think he won an award for it, like best actor or actress or whatever it's called.
No, he was nominated. But
nominated. Okay.
The only thing they won at the Golden Globes was this.
Okay.
It was nominated against Crazy Rich Asians, which I heard was very good. Mary Poppins Returns, which is a movie. Vice, which whatever, and The Favorite. So of those, I mean, granted, I haven't seen 4 of the 5, except for Green Book. I think Green Book was the best one.
I want to see Vice. I think we forgot.
I do and don't. Like, I like Adam McKay a lot, like the director. I think he makes pretty good movies. I think Christian Bale looks really interesting as what's his name?
Not McCain, but
the old vice president that I can't think of what his name is. Dude who shot that guy in the face. Yeah, but we'll see. I mean, if we end up seeing it, we end up seeing it. I'll see it. I'll watch it. I'll watch anything.
All right. But that's all I got, man. Any closing thoughts or feelings for you, man?
No. I think people should see this movie. I think it's enjoyable. It's good. It'll probably end up getting nominated for some Oscars, I imagine, too. Just because it's just one of those types of movies that would, with the cast and with the just kind of whole setting of the movie in general.
Oh, well, I do have one last thing. Every time people talk about going back to the good old days in any way, shape, or form, and going where times were more wholesome, like when you look at their situation, does that seem wholesome to you? Like it always boggles my mind.
There's no such thing as the good old days. The past was bad. The present is bad. it's always bad. Everything is bad. There's no good time. Unless, I mean, if you're, I guess, a wealthy white dude, then every time is a good time. But if you're anything else, then times kind of suck.
That always boggled me when people are saying things like that, and it's like, and if you're like actually paying attention, and they're like, yeah, we have no money, like none of us do, you know,
Yeah.
and it was like we walk through the streets and like no one has money. We're all broke. We're really broke, you know, to where, you know, I'm like, we're really thinking about how we're paying the bills, like, you know, and I'm getting to that point where I'm like, man, how are these people eating if all they got is like $150?
Yeah, getting by. Well, I mean, you know, also inflation is a big part of that. $150 goes a lot further then than it did now, or than it does now.
I know, but she kind of made it clear that they didn't have enough to pay rent, and he was like,
Oh yeah, yeah.
yeah, I'm working on
Dogs.
that.
He's gonna eat hot dogs every day for the rest of his life.
Right, and it was like one of those situations where I was just like, that's just tough, man. And like, you know, like I looked over because I watched it with my wife, you know, and she was just like, you know, and I was like, yeah, and see, they want to go back to these times, and I was like, it's hard to believe that they were poorer than us, like. Man, like any stories I hear from my parents and my grandparents and all those different types of people, like it was tough, man. It was tough. You know, it was like 9 kids, like rice and beans is all we ate. And that's, I don't know.
And also, beards couldn't really pull off beards back in the day. No, there's nobody had beards for some reason in the 60s and 50s. But I couldn't do that, man. I'm too lazy to shave every day. Fuck that shit.
I like letting it grow. I just like seeing different stuff. So I like letting it grow and then cutting it, and letting it grow, then cutting it. That's kind of like my MO.
Yeah, I trimmed it earlier today. It was getting kind of like it was doing weird things and going outward. Like I'll do that, but I just look like a baby when I have my face shaved, you know?
People do say that about me. It doesn't matter. I like the change. So
I don't get carded when I have my beard, so I'm like, this is great.
I don't get carded anymore at all.
Oh, I still get carded when I have my baby face. They're like, "Are you 18?" Like, really, bro? Come on. Do I look 18? Come on.
Well, yes, you do. But that's all I got.
Yeah.
Money Match Gaming Podcast. We talk Green Book. Good day. What's up?
We forgot to give a
thumbs up,
number
and thumbs
grade.
down. Yeah. I'd give it a 7. I give it a 4.5 out of 5. Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, I like it. I like it a lot.
So if you're into it, go see this movie. And until next time, my friends, deuces.
Wow.